A maid working at a luxury hotel noticed a high-end client entering his penthouse suite with a little girl, assuming she must be his daughter. Yet something about the pair immediately felt off. The girl's dirty clothes and wide-eyed wonder at the hotel's opulence seemed strangely at odds with being the child of such a wealthy man. When the maid finally got a chance to clean their room, she peeked under the bedsheets, and the horror she discovered left her frozen in shock. Before we dive into this gripping story, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. The Grand Evermore Hotel stood as a beacon of luxury in the heart of the city, its opulent facade gleaming in the night. Inside, the vast lobby was a testament to elegance, with its high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and polished marble floors. It was here at 10:30 p.m. that Dana Morales found herself dusting the intricate wall pieces and decorations that adorned the space. At 35 years old, Dana had been working as a maid at the Grand Evermore for 5 years. Her nimble fingers moved methodically over the ornate surfaces, her eyes focused on her task. The night shift had begun just 30 minutes ago, and already the lobby had settled into its familiar nocturnal rhythm. Dana moved with practiced ease, her movements efficient yet graceful. As she worked, she could hear the low murmur of conversation from behind the reception desk, punctuated by occasional laughter. The night shift always had a different energy compared to the bustling day hours. With fewer guests checking in and out, the staff adopted a more relaxed demeanor. Yet Dana remained focused on her task, preferring to maintain a professional distance rather than join in the casual banter. As she moved to a gilt-framed mirror, carefully removing any trace of dust from its ornate edges, the lobby's atmosphere suddenly shifted. The chatter behind the desk abruptly ceased, replaced by a tense silence that immediately caught Dana's attention. She turned, her eyes drawn to the source of the disturbance. The hotel's glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, admitting a striking pair of figures. A man, impeccably dressed in a tailored blue suit that spoke of wealth and influence, strode confidently into the lobby. Beside him, in stark contrast, was a young girl no more than 10 years old, her wide eyes taking in the grandeur of her surroundings with undisguised wonder. Dana watched as a chauffeur outside returned to a sleek black limousine, the vehicle gliding away into the night as the man and girl continued their way into the hotel. In the reduced staffing of the night shift, there was no doorman or security guard to greet them. Recognizing the need for a proper welcome, Dana set aside her duster and approached the pair. "Welcome to the Grand Evermore," Dana said, her voice warm and professional, as she offered a slight bow. "How may I assist you this evening?" The girl, still mesmerized by her surroundings, spoke in a hushed, awe-filled voice. "I've never seen anything like this before. It looks like a princess's castle." The man beside her smiled indulgently. "You're the princess here, darling." It was then that Dana noticed the state of the girl's clothes. They were stained with dirt, the fabric worn and faded. Even her shoes, a pair of imitation Crocs, were the cheap kind Dana often saw in the local market. The contrast between the girl's appearance and the opulence of the hotel was jarring. Dana hesitated for a moment before speaking, her professional training warring with her instincts. "I'm sorry, sir," she began carefully, "but we do have a dress code for guests. Perhaps the young lady would like to change into something more suitable." The effect of her words was immediate and alarming. The man's face contorted with anger, his eyes flashing dangerously. "Don't you know who I am?" he snarled, his voice rising. "How dare you speak to my daughter that way? She'll change once we're in our room. She's just a child who got dirty playing outside. Or are you suggesting I should change her right here in the lobby in front of you?" Dana took a step back, taken aback by the man's sudden outburst. Before she could formulate a response, she felt a presence beside her. It was Ronald, the night manager, who had apparently been watching the exchange from afar. "Mr. Langley, please accept my sincerest apologies," Ronald said smoothly, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Dana usually works the day shift, and it's been a while since she's taken on night duties. Please allow me to offer you a complimentary massage at our spa to make up for the misunderstanding. We provide both adult and children's massage services, so you and your daughter can enjoy the experience. You're welcome to redeem it any time before 8 p.m. during your stay." The man, now identified as Mr. Langley, seemed to relax slightly at Ronald's intervention. He nodded curtly, apparently satisfied with the offered compensation. Ronald gestured towards the reception desk, guiding the pair to check in while shooting Dana a warning glance. As Dana watched them walk away, regret crept in for having confronted the man. The night shift did have a different atmosphere, and like Ronald, her manager, said perhaps she just wasn't used to the more relaxed setting. Yet the girl's awe at the hotel's luxury, the worn state of her clothes, and the man's excessive response continued to nag at her. For now, all she could do was return to her duties, though the encounter left an unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach. The check-in process proceeded with the smooth efficiency that the Grand Evermore prided itself on, even during the quieter night hours. Dana, having returned to her cleaning duties, found her attention continually drawn back to the odd pair at the reception desk. She watched from the corner of her eye as Mr. Langley signed the necessary papers with a flourish, his movements betraying an impatience that seemed at odds with the leisurely pace of a luxury hotel stay. The girl, meanwhile, continued to gaze around the lobby in wonder, her small hand clutching the strap of a worn backpack that Dana hadn't noticed before. It was the only luggage they seemed to have, aside from a small suitcase that Mr. Langley had brought in himself. The incongruity of their minimal baggage with the typical accoutrements of wealthy hotel guests added another layer to Dana's growing unease. As the receptionist handed Mr. Langley a sleek keycard and Wi-Fi information packet, all neatly enclosed in a branded hotel envelope, Dana saw Ronald catch her eye and motion for her to approach. She set down her cleaning supplies and made her way over, her steps measured and cautious. "Dana," Ronald said in a low voice, his expression a mixture of frustration and resignation, "I need you to escort Mr. Langley and his daughter to their room. We're short-staffed tonight, and the bellboy isn't available." Dana nodded her understanding, even as her instincts screamed at her to find an excuse, any excuse to avoid prolonged contact with the strange pair. But years of training in hospitality won out, and she stepped forward with a professional smile. "If you'll follow me, Mr. Langley," she said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil, "I'll show you to your room." Mr. Langley barely acknowledged her, simply gesturing for her to lead the way. Dana picked up the small suitcase and offered to carry the girl's backpack, which the girl handed over. She was surprised by how light it felt. As she guided them toward the elevators, and they ascended to the higher floors where the penthouse suites were located, Dana couldn't shake a nagging sense of unease. The lack of luggage, the girl's appearance, the man's behavior, it all felt off. The elevator ride was silent, the tension palpable in the confined space. Dana could feel Mr. Langley's impatient energy, his foot tapping a restless rhythm on the polished floor. The girl, in contrast, seemed to shrink into herself, her earlier excitement dimmed in the oppressive atmosphere. As they exited the elevator and made their way down the plush corridor, Dana overheard a whispered conversation between Mr. Langley and the girl. "I'm hungry," the girl said, her voice small but eager. "When can we eat?" "Everything here is so beautiful." Mr. Langley's voice was low and smooth, a stark contrast to his earlier outburst. "We'll order something when we get to the room, Sophie. You can have whatever you like." "Do they have grilled cheese?" Sophie asked, a hint of excitement creeping back into her voice. "They have much more than grilled cheese here," Mr. Langley replied, a note of indulgence in his tone. "You can order anything you want." "Yay!" Sophie exclaimed, her voice echoing down the corridor before Mr. Langley quickly shushed her. "We need to be quiet," he admonished. "There might be other guests here." As they approached the penthouse suite, Dana prepared herself to give the standard room tour. She opened the door with a flourish, ready to step inside and begin explaining the various amenities and features of the luxurious space. However, before she could cross the threshold, Mr. Langley raised his hand, stopping her in her tracks. "That won't be necessary," he said curtly. "We don't need a tour." He reached out and took the suitcase from Dana's hand before she could even offer it to him. Then, in a tone that brooked no argument, he said, "Please send up a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015 and 2 fresh warm bathrobes, one for me and a smaller one for my daughter." We'll order food later, but I'd like the wine processed immediately. With that, he ushered Sophie into the room and closed the door, leaving Dana standing in the hallway, her planned tour dying on her lips. As she made her way back to the elevator to fulfill Mr. Langley's requests, her mind was racing. Sophie didn't seem like Mr. Langley's daughter at all. Her manner of speaking, the slight accent in her voice, and her obvious unfamiliarity with luxury all pointed to a different background. Dana had seen enough wealthy families pass through the hotel to know that their children were usually well-versed in luxury, their manners polished, their clothing immaculate. Sophie was none of these things. But then, Dana reminded herself, perhaps she was jumping to conclusions. Maybe Sophie was a niece from a less affluent branch of the family, or had simply been raised differently. She convinced herself that she shouldn't judge by appearance alone. As the elevator descended, Dana tried to shake off her concerns. After all, it wasn't her place to question guests, especially ones as apparently influential as Mr. Langley. But the nagging feeling of unease persisted, a quiet voice in the back of her mind insisting that something was very wrong in room U1845. The soft ding of the elevator announced Dana's return to the lobby level. The expansive space, so alive with activity during the day, now held an almost eerie quiet. The low hum of the air conditioning and the distant ticking of an antique grandfather clock were the only sounds that broke the silence. Dana made her way across the polished marble floor, her footsteps echoing slightly despite her best efforts to move quietly. She headed first to the hotel's restaurant, a dimly lit space that exuded an air of understated elegance even in its off hours. Behind the bar, a single attendant was polishing glasses, the repetitive motion almost meditative in its rhythm. He looked up as Dana approached, offering a friendly nod of recognition. "Good evening, Thomas," Dana greeted him. "I need a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015, please. An order from room U1845. Thomas raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by the choice. "Excellent taste," he commented as he moved to retrieve the requested wine. "That's a $1,500 bottle, you know. Must be a special occasion." Dana forced a smile, not wanting to betray her unease. "I suppose so," she replied non-committally. As Thomas prepared the wine tray complete with crystal glasses, Dana found herself asking, "Has room U1845 placed any food orders yet?" Thomas shook his head. "No, nothing from that room so far. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Dana said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "The guest mentioned they might order later." Thomas nodded, seemingly satisfied with her explanation. As he handed over the prepared wine tray, Dana thanked him and turned to leave. But before she could take more than a few steps, a thought struck her. "Thomas," she called back, "if they place an order, could you let me know? I just want to make sure they're taken care of. That way I can stay nearby and deliver the food quickly." "I heard the girl say she was very hungry." Thomas gave her a slightly puzzled look, but agreed nonetheless. With that settled, Dana made her way to the housekeeping area, the weight of the expensive wine tray a tangible reminder of the strange situation unfolding upstairs. The housekeeping room was a stark contrast to the luxurious spaces of the hotel proper. Utilitarian shelves lined the walls, stocked with cleaning supplies and neatly folded linens. In one corner stood a large cabinet, its gentle hum indicating that it was keeping its contents warm. Dana set down the wine tray carefully before opening the warming cabinet. The rush of warm air that greeted her carried the clean, comforting scent of freshly laundered fabric. She selected 2 plush bathrobes, one large and one small, their softness a testament to the hotel's commitment to luxury. As she gathered the robes in her arms, Dana couldn't help but think about Sophie. The girl's excitement over the prospect of room service, her wonder at the hotel's grandeur, it all spoke of someone unaccustomed to such luxury. And yet, Mr. Langley had claimed she was his daughter. The inconsistency nagged at Dana, a persistent itch she couldn't scratch. With both the wine and the bathrobes in hand, Dana made her way back to the elevators. As she waited for the car to arrive, she found herself rehearsing what she would say when she reached room U1845. Should she ask if they needed anything else? Should she mention the food again? Or would that be overstepping? She wasn't usually this hesitant. Normally, the words came easily and automatically, especially after 5 years of working as a maid and interacting with all kinds of guests. But tonight, she felt oppressed by the man's presence. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, its doors sliding open to reveal the empty car. Dana stepped inside, her reflection in the mirrored walls revealing the worry etched on her face. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She shouldn't be overthinking the pair in room U1845. It wasn't her place to judge. She was just a maid, after all. But as the elevator began its ascent, Dana couldn't shake the feeling that she was carrying more than just wine and bathrobes. She was carrying a responsibility, one that she wasn't sure she was prepared to bear. The penthouse floor corridor stretched before Dana, its plush carpeting muffling her footsteps as she made her way towards room U1845. The weight of the wine tray and bathrobes in her arms felt heavier with each step, and with her pounding heartbeat and quickening breath, it became increasingly difficult to maintain her balance. The wine glasses began to clink and tremble in response to her nervousness. As she approached the door, Dana paused, taking a moment to compose herself. She could hear muffled voices from within the room, Mr. Langley's low, authoritative tone interspersed with Sophie's higher, more hesitant responses. Taking a deep breath, Dana raised her hand and knocked firmly on the door. The voices inside immediately fell silent. A moment later, Dana heard footsteps approaching, and then the door swung open to reveal Mr. Langley. His expression was impassive, but Dana couldn't help but notice a flicker of something, annoyance, worry, in his eyes. "Your wine and bathrobes, sir," Dana said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Mr. Langley nodded curtly. "Bring them in," he instructed, stepping aside to allow Dana entry. As she crossed the threshold, Dana's eyes quickly scanned the room. The penthouse suite was as opulent as one would expect, all gleaming surfaces and sumptuous furnishings. But it was the small figure huddled on the expansive sofa that caught Dana's attention. Sophie sat with her knees drawn up to her chest, her earlier excitement seemingly evaporated. She looked small and out of place amidst the luxury, her dirty clothes a stark contrast to the pristine white of the sofa. Dana moved to set the wine tray on a nearby table, acutely aware of Mr. Langley's eyes following her every move. As she arranged the glasses and uncorked the wine with practiced ease, she couldn't help but glance at Sophie again. "Is there anything else you need, sir?" Dana asked, her question directed at Mr. Langley, but her eyes lingering on Sophie. "Perhaps some food for the young miss?" Before Mr. Langley could respond, Sophie's voice piped up. "Can I have a grilled cheese sandwich?" "Please?" Mr. Langley's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "We'll order food later, Sophie," he said, his tone brooking no argument. Then, turning to Dana, he added, "That will be all for now. You can leave the bathrobes in the bathroom." Dana nodded, moving towards the bathroom with the soft, warm bundles in her arms. As she passed Sophie, she offered the girl a small, reassuring smile. Sophie's answering smile was tentative but genuine, a brief moment of connection that only heightened Dana's unease. In the bathroom, Dana carefully hung the bathrobes on the heated towel rails. The space was a marvel of marble and glass, with a deep soaking tub and a shower large enough for several people. As she smoothed out a non-existent wrinkle in one of the robes, Dana heard Sophie's voice again, drifting in from the main room. "I don't want to take a bath," the girl was saying, her voice small but insistent. "I don't like water. When can we eat? And where's Mum? When is she coming?" Dana froze, her hand still on the bathrobe. The questions tumbled through her mind. Why was Sophie afraid of water? Where was her mother? And if Mr. Langley was truly her father, why did she seem so unfamiliar with him? Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Dana emerged from the bathroom. Mr. Langley was standing by the window, his back to the room, while Sophie remained curled up on the sofa. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" Dana asked, her voice carefully neutral. Mr. Langley turned, his face a mask of forced calm. "No, that will be all," he said dismissively. Then, as if remembering himself, he added, "Thank you for your service." He reached into his pocket and handed Dana a generous tip, 2 crisp $100 bills. "Please, I want a quiet night tonight. I don't want to hear any staff around the corridor, he added, his tone firm. As Dana extended her hand to receive the tip, she offered a polite, "Thank you, sir," without immediately processing the amount. It wasn't until she turned toward the door that the crisp texture of the bills fully registered, and a sudden flicker of surprise mixed with unease stirred within her chest. Still, she kept her expression neutral and made her way out. As she stepped away, she caught Mr. Langley speaking to Sophie, his voice low and strained. "That's fine if you don't want to bathe now. We'll be here for a few days. You have time to get comfortable." The words sent a chill down Dana's spine. If this was a normal father-daughter relationship, why did Sophie need time to get comfortable? And why were they planning to stay for days with so little luggage? As the door closed behind her, Dana stood in the hallway for a moment, her mind whirling with questions and concerns. She knew she should return to her duties, continue with her night shift as if nothing was amiss. Dana made her way back to the elevator, but the nagging feeling in her gut told her that something was unusual in room U1845. As Dana emerged from the elevator into the lobby, the vast space seemed to amplify her tumultuous thoughts. Her eyes swept across the lobby, taking in the familiar sights that usually brought her a sense of pride in her workplace. But tonight everything seemed different, tinged with an undercurrent of anxiety. As her gaze settled on the reception desk, she noticed Ronald, the night manager, engaged in animated conversation with a group of staff members. Their laughter, muted but cheerful, carried across the empty lobby. Taking a deep breath to steel herself, Dana approached the group. As she drew near, she could hear snippets of their conversation, jokes and gossip that seemed trivial in light of what she had witnessed upstairs. "Excuse me," Dana said, her voice cutting through their chatter. "Ronald, could I speak with you for a moment?" "Privately." The group fell silent, exchanging glances that ranged from curious to mischievous. One of the younger staff members, a bellhop barely out of his teens, let out a low whistle. "Ooh, night catch," he teased, nudging Ronald with his elbow. "Don't get too private now." The others snickered, and Dana felt a wave of disgust wash over her. If there was one thing she hated most about the night shift, it was this: the way the front desk staff often devolved into juvenile behavior, saying and doing things they'd never dare during the day shift when the hotel manager was present. Ronald, to his credit, seemed to sense Dana's discomfort. He shot a warning glance at the group before turning to her with a nod. "Of course, Dana, let's step into the staff room." As they walked away from the desk, Dana could hear the muffled giggles and whispers behind them. She clenched her jaw, reminding herself that there were more important matters at hand than the immaturity of her co-workers. The staff room was a stark contrast to the opulence of the lobby. Utilitarian furniture, a small kitchenette, and a bulletin board covered in memos and schedules created a space that was functional but far from luxurious. Ronald closed the door behind them, muffling the distant sounds of the lobby. "What's on your mind, Dana?" Ronald asked, leaning against a worn desk. "You look troubled." Dana took a moment to gather her thoughts, aware that how she presented her concerns could make all the difference. "It's about the guests in Penthouse Suite, U1845, she began cautiously. "The man and the young girl. Something about their situation doesn't feel right to me." Ronald's expression shifted, a hint of wariness creeping into his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I can't put my finger on it exactly," Dana admitted, "but there are things that don't add up. The girl, Sophie, she doesn't seem comfortable with the man, and her clothes, her behavior, it's all just off." Ronald's face hardened slightly. "Dana, do you have any idea who that man is?" he asked, his tone carrying a note of warning. "That's Victor Langley. He's an elite clientele, and the girl is Sophie Langley, his daughter. You shouldn't be questioning their relationship based on some vague feeling." Dana felt a flicker of frustration. "But sir," she persisted, "Sophie was wearing fake Crocs. She complained about being hungry and uncomfortable with water. And Mr. Langley, he—" "Enough," Ronald cut her off sharply. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm himself. "Dana, listen to me. Rich people, they're different. They parent their children differently. It's not our place to judge or interfere." He paused, fixing Dana with a stern look. "Do you know how much Mr. Langley is paying per night for that luxury suite? $15,000. He's an important guest, and he should be treated with the absolute best service we can offer. We can't risk offending him based on your hunches." Dana felt her resolve weakening under Ronald's gaze, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her gut. "I understand that, sir, but—" "No buts, Dana," Ronald interrupted again. "This is nonsense, and if you keep this up, it's going to lead to trouble. It's the night shift. Relax. Take a break at the restaurant, have a nap in the staff room, or clean by the pool area if that helps take your mind off things, but drop this. Understood?" With that, Ronald left the staff room, leaving Dana alone with her thoughts. She glanced at the folded mattress in the corner of the room, considering Ronald's suggestion of a nap. But sleep was the furthest thing from her mind right now. Instead, she found herself drawn to the restaurant's back kitchen. As she pushed through the swinging doors, the warm, comforting smells of cooking food enveloped her. The night kitchen staff were talking calmly as they worked, the clatter of pots and pans providing a soothing background noise. Carlos, one of the night cooks, looked up as she entered. "Hey, Dana," he greeted her with a friendly smile. "What brings you down here?" "Could I trouble you for some instant noodles?" Dana asked, managing a small smile in return. "Sure thing," Carlos replied. "We'll whip that up for you as soon as we finish this order." As Dana waited, leaning against a clean countertop, she couldn't help but ask, "Say, Carlos, did you get any room service orders from U1845 tonight?" Carlos nodded, his hands busy chopping vegetables. "Yeah, actually. Bit of an odd order, that one." Dana's heart quickened. "Odd how?" "Well, they ordered a ton of food," Carlos explained, counting off on his fingers. "Burgers, fries, spaghetti, mac and cheese. Real kids' menu stuff, you know. But then they also ordered a bunch of those fancy hors d'oeuvres we usually only do for events." Dana nodded slowly, processing this information. The mix of childish comfort foods and sophisticated appetizers seemed to mirror the strange dynamic between Sophie and Mr. Langley. At least, she thought with a small measure of relief, Sophie would be fed soon. Perhaps Mr. Langley was indeed taking care of her needs, despite Dana's misgivings. As Carlos set a steaming bowl of instant noodles in front of her, Dana thanked him, her mind still whirling with thoughts of room U1845. She knew that Ronald had warned her to drop the matter, and maybe he was right. She shouldn't overthink this anymore. The kitchen's warmth and the comforting taste of the noodles offered a brief moment of relief. As she ate, she tried to push aside her suspicions, telling herself it wasn't her place to dwell on such matters. Her focus should remain on her duties, nothing more. Absent-mindedly, she patted the 2 crisp $100 bills in her pocket, reminding herself of Mr. Langley's generosity. Despite her initial misstep at the entrance, which had clearly offended him, he had still given her a generous tip. The rest of the night shift dragged on at an excruciatingly slow pace, each measured tick of the hotel's grand clock serving as a relentless reminder of the late hour. Dana threw herself into her work, trying to find solace in the familiar rhythm of her tasks, polishing the brass fixtures until they gleamed, meticulously straightening the magazines in the reading nook, emptying all the trash bin around the hotel, and carefully dusting each potted plant to ensure they remained pristine and perfectly positioned. When she finally completed all her duties, Dana glanced at the clock and saw that it was already 4 a.m. Letting out a quiet sigh, she made her way to the staff room, eager for a moment of rest. As she stepped inside, Ronald's words echoed in her mind, his assertion that rich people had their own way of living. Maybe he was right. Perhaps Mr. Langley had a more relaxed approach to raising his daughter, allowing her to play in the dirt and wear cheap shoes as a way of teaching her something valuable. Maybe Ronald was right, it wasn't her place to question it. With that thought, she tried to push aside her lingering doubts, convincing herself that some things were simply beyond her understanding. In the quiet of the staff room, Dana sank onto a worn couch, her body tired but her mind alert. She put in her earphones and let the soft hum of music wash over her, hoping it would keep her awake. But as the minutes passed, her eyelids grew heavier, her body sinking into the pull of exhaustion. She knew the sleepiest hour wasn't during the dead of night, but rather the early morning. the time when her body, craving rest, would try to betray her. Anticipating this, she had set an alarm for 6 a.m. Just as she felt herself slipping into sleep, the sudden blare of her phone startled her awake. Jolted awake, she blinked rapidly, her heart pounding from the sudden alarm. It felt as if only a second had passed. Had she really fallen asleep, or was it just a fleeting moment of lost time? Glancing at the time, she sighed. 6 a.m., only one more hour to go. Pushing herself upright, she made her way to the restroom, splashing cold water on her face in an attempt to shake off the drowsiness. The shock of it helped, if only slightly. Then she exited the restroom and walked out of the staff room into the corridor. Dana made her way to the housekeeping closet. The familiar scent of cleaning products and fresh linens enveloped her as she entered, providing a small measure of comfort. She began to stock her cleaning cart methodically. Fresh towels, miniature toiletries, cleaning sprays, and polishing cloths, all finding their designated places. The penthouse level would soon need attention, as it always did in the early morning hours. Even unoccupied suites required daily maintenance to keep them pristine and well-aired. Dana recalled the generous tip and Mr. Langley's firm request the night before. He didn't want staff lingering in the corridor. But as she glanced at the clock, she reasoned that it was already morning. It would be perfectly justifiable for her to be on that floor at this hour, carrying out her usual duties. And if she happened to pass by room U 1845, she couldn't deny the lingering curiosity tugging at her. Decision made, Dana wheeled her fully stocked cart towards the service elevator. The ride to the penthouse level seemed to take an eternity, each floor passing in slow motion as Dana's heart rate quickened with every steps, filled with anticipation and apprehension. When the elevator doors finally opened onto the plush corridor of the penthouse level, Dana took a deep, steadying breath before pushing her cart out. She began her rounds with the unoccupied suites, working efficiently but without her usual thoroughness. Her attention was divided, her ears straining for any sound from room U1845. As she approached the occupied suite, Dana slowed her pace, her movements becoming deliberately quiet. She was just about to pass the door when it suddenly swung open, causing her to start in surprise. Mr. Langley emerged, a stark contrast to the composed businessman from the previous evening. Gone was the crisp suit, replaced by rumpled loungewear that hung loosely on his frame. His usually neat hair was disheveled, stray strands sticking up as if he had run his hands through it one too many times. But it was his eyes that unsettled Dana the most, wide, unfocused, carrying a wild, almost frantic glint that sent a cold shiver down her spine. Summoning her professional demeanor, Dana offered a polite smile. "Good morning, Mr. Langley. I hope you've had a pleasant stay so far. Is there anything I can do for you?" Mr. Langley seemed to freeze for a moment, his eyes widening slightly, as if he hadn't expected to encounter anyone in the hallway. He quickly composed himself, however, offering a tight smile in return. "Yes, thank you," he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. "The stay has been satisfactory." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "I was just heading out for a morning run." "When does the room cleaning service usually start?" His tone was casual, but there was an edge to it. "We usually begin around this time, sir. Would you like your room serviced now?" Mr. Langley nodded, a look of relief passing over his face. "Yes, that would be perfect. I was planning to head to the gym for my morning workout. It would be ideal if the room could be cleaned while I'm there." He glanced at his watch. "Breakfast doesn't begin for another hour, correct?" "That's right, sir," Dana confirmed, her mind racing with possibilities. "The gym is open now and breakfast service starts at 7 a.m. I'd be happy to ensure your room is cleaned while you're at the gym." "Excellent," Mr. Langley said, seeming to relax slightly. However, instead of moving towards the elevator as Dana expected, he turned back towards his room. "Just a moment," he muttered, disappearing inside. Dana stood in the hallway preparing her cart. A moment later, Mr. Langley reappeared. He stepped out into the hallway, carefully closing the door behind him. With deliberate movements, he hung the "Please Clean Room" sign on the door handle. Then turning to Dana, his expression suddenly intense, he said, "I'd appreciate it if you could clean just the living area and bathroom. Please don't enter the bedroom." The request sent a jolt of alarm through Dana. It was an unusual request, to say the least. Most guests, especially those staying in luxury suites, typically wanted their entire room cleaned, with particular attention paid to the bedroom first thing in the morning. Keeping her voice steady, Dana replied, "Of course, sir. We always respect our guests' privacy and follow their specific instructions." She paused, then added carefully, "Is there any particular reason you don't want the bedroom cleaned? We're usually very thorough in our service, especially for our suite guests." Mr. Langley's eyes narrowed slightly. "No particular reason," he said, his tone clipped. "My daughter is still sleeping, and I don't want her disturbed. That's all." Dana nodded, even as her mind raced with questions. If Sophie was still sleeping, why did Mr. Langley request to have his room cleaned right now? Vacuuming alone would inevitably make noise, but housekeeping was used to working around sleeping guests. And how disordered could the living room have possibly become in just one night? "Understood, sir," Dana said, maintaining her professional demeanor. "I'll make sure to clean quietly and avoid the bedroom entirely." Mr. Langley seemed to relax slightly at her acquiescence. "Good," he said. "I'll be at the gym if you need anything." With that, he strode towards the elevator, leaving Dana alone in the corridor. As the elevator doors closed behind Mr. Langley, Dana stood for a moment, her hand resting on her cleaning cart. The encounter had done nothing to allay her concerns. If anything, Mr. Langley's peculiar behavior and pointed instructions had only reignited the unease she had struggled to suppress all night. Taking a deep breath, Dana knocked softly on the door. When no response came, she reached for her master key. With a quiet click, the door to room U1845 unlocked. Dana pushed it open slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she stepped into the suite, guiding her cleaning cart ahead of her, she scanned the dimly lit room, her pulse quickening with each step. She silently promised herself that as long as Mr. Langley was away, she would keep an eye on Sophie, ensuring that the girl was safe. The sight that greeted her made her gasp audibly. The main living area of the penthouse suite, which should have been only minimally disheveled after just one night's use, resembled the aftermath of a wild party. Cushions from the sofa lay strewn across the floor, and a faint, sour smell permeated the air, making Dana's stomach turn. The dining table was a chaotic mix of half-eaten food and spilled wine. Red pasta sauce dripped over the surface, macaronic pieces were scattered haphazardly, and breadcrumbs mixed with bits of meat created a grim tableau. Dana felt a surge of confusion. She remembered the food orders from the night before, but she couldn't comprehend how the table had ended up in such a state. It was baffling, almost as if a storm had swept through the room. It was no wonder Mr. Langley had requested her to clean the suite as early as possible. The mess was overwhelming. Determined to tackle the mess, Dana took a deep breath and began her work. She collected the dirty dishes, placing them on the lower part of her cleaning cart, the weight of them a stark reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. As she wiped the table clean, she discarded the leftover food items, using a cleaning agent and a damp cloth to tackle the grease and stains. With each stroke, she felt a sense of accomplishment, even as the mess around her lingered in her mind. Once the table was clean, she considered heading to the bathroom to continue her work. However, her gaze was drawn to the closed bedroom door. A nagging thought crept into her mind. Mr. Langley had explicitly told her not to enter the bedroom, but her concern for the girl weighed heavily on her. Why had he left her alone in the room while he went out? It wasn't the most unusual request she had received in her 5 years as a maid, but typically, guests waited until everyone was awake before requesting cleaning services. Dana felt a tension rise within her. A real father, she thought, would care more for his daughter than to leave her alone. The mess at the table made her question Mr. Langley's priorities. Battling her instincts against her adherence to protocol, she ultimately decided to follow her curiosity. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Dana opened the bedroom door and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, and at first she saw nothing out of the ordinary. Confusion settled over her as she scanned the space, searching for the girl. It was only when she glanced at the bed that she noticed a shape on the massive bed, a small, still form buried under a mound of luxurious bedding. Her heart raced as she moved closer, pulling back the covers to reveal the girl lying motionless, her face turned down into the mattress, still wearing the same dirty clothes from the night before. "Sophie," Dana called softly, her voice barely above a whisper. When no response came, she moved closer, her heart racing. For a terrifying moment, Dana feared the worst, but then she noticed the slight rise and fall of Sophie's back as she breathed. Relief flooded through Dana, quickly followed by a new wave of concern. Sophie's breathing was shallow and irregular, and she didn't stir even as Dana gently shook her shoulder. "Sophie? Sophie, can you hear me?" Dana's voice was more urgent now, fear lending its strength. As she gently turned the girl onto her side, making sure she wouldn't choke or suffocate, Dana noticed the red stain of wine on the bed linens where Sophie's mouth had pressed against the fabric. Her gaze then shifted to the bedside table, where 3 empty wine bottles stood in stark, accusatory silence. Beside them lay a small capsule with traces of powder scattered on the surface, something Dana, despite her limited experience, recognized as far more sinister than mere wine. A chilling realization settled in her gut, amplifying her urgency to act. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Mr. Langley must have drugged Sophie, using alcohol, and who knew what else to render her unconscious. The realization made Dana's stomach churn with a mixture of disgust and fury. Just as she was about to run for help, Dana heard the sound of a key card in the suite's main door. Panic surged through her as she realized Mr. Langley must have returned. Moving quickly, she pulled the covers back over Sophie and rushed out of the bedroom, closing the door behind her quietly. By the time Mr. Langley entered the suite, Dana was wiping down a shelf in the living area, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he must be able to hear it. Mr. Langley's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene, his gaze lingering on Dana with clear suspicion. "I thought I told you not to enter the bedroom," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Dana forced herself to meet his eyes, praying that her face didn't betray the turmoil within. "I haven't, sir," she lied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've only been cleaning out here as you instructed." For a long moment Mr. Langley stared at her, as if trying to peer into her very thoughts. Then abruptly he said, "That will be all. You can go now." Dana nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she collected her cleaning supplies. As she wheeled her cart toward the door, she noticed Mr. Langley heading toward the bathroom. He passed her a wet towel he had brought back from the gym, and she accepted it, placing it on the lower part of the cart. She hesitated at the threshold, turning to look back at him. "Sir," she said, surprised by the strength in her own voice, "if you need anything else, anything at all, please don't hesitate to call the front desk." Mr. Langley waved her off impatiently, already reaching for the bathroom door handle. As Dana closed the suite door behind her, she leaned against the wall of the corridor, her legs suddenly weak. The image of Sophie, small and vulnerable on that massive bed, was burned into Dana's mind. She understood now, with unwavering certainty, that she couldn't just walk away. No matter the potential consequences or the risks to her job and personal safety, she had to take action. Eventually Mr. Langley would discover that she had entered the bedroom and repositioned Sophie, and it would be clear that she had uncovered what had happened to the girl. With renewed determination, Dana straightened up and pushed her cart towards the service elevator. She had a plan forming in her mind, a way to help Sophie. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone, not even Ronald, stand in her way. The descent to the lobby felt interminable, each floor passing in a blur as Dana's mind raced with the implications of what she had discovered. The weight of her knowledge pressed down on her, making the confines of the service elevator feel suffocating. As the elevator doors opened onto the lobby level, Dana took a deep, steadying breath. The weight of what she had discovered in room U-1845 pressed heavily on her shoulders, making the spacious lobby feel suddenly claustrophobic. The early morning quiet was broken only by the soft ticking of the grand clock and the distant hum of the air conditioning system. Dana's mind raced as she pushed her cleaning cart across the polished marble floor. The image of Sophie, small and vulnerable on that massive bed, was seared into her memory. The empty wine bottles, the suspicious white powder, it all painted a horrifying picture that Dana couldn't ignore. As she approached the reception desk, she saw Ronald engaged in conversation with a few night staff members. Their casual laughter felt jarringly inappropriate, given the gravity of the situation upstairs. Dana's determination solidified. She knew she had to act regardless of the consequences. Without hesitation, Dana strode behind the reception desk, ignoring the confused looks from her colleagues. She reached for the landline phone, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up the receiver. "Dana, what the hell are you doing?" one of the receptionists asked, but she paid no heed. Ronald, alerted by the commotion, quickly approached. "Dana, what's going on? Who are you calling?" "I'm calling 911, Dana said, her voice steadier than she felt. But before she could dial, Ronald's hand shot out, pressing down on the hook switch, disconnecting the line. "What do you think you're doing?" Ronald hissed, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. Dana met his gaze, her resolve strengthening. "It's an emergency, Ronald. The girl in room U-1845, she's unconscious, intoxicated. She needs help." Ronald's eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't remove his hand from the phone. "Are you sure about this, Dana? Do you understand the consequences of making such an accusation?" "I don't care about the consequences," Dana shot back, her voice rising. "A child's life is at stake here." With a sudden surge of strength, Dana shoved Ronald's hand away and quickly dialed 911. As the line connected and the dispatcher answered, Dana spoke rapidly, explaining what she had seen in the hotel room. She identified herself as a maid at the Grand Evermore Hotel and requested both police and paramedics, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. As she spoke, Ronald's face cycled through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and finally, a grudging acceptance. When Dana ended the call, he stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "You've breached multiple protocols, Dana. You entered a room against explicit instructions. You physically restrained me, your manager. There will be consequences for this." Dana met his gaze steadily. "I don't care if I'm wrong, Ronald. I don't care if I lose my job. A child's life is more important than any of that. My gut tells me something terrible is happening in that room, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't act." As they stood there, locked in a tense standoff, the air thick with unspoken words, neither Dana nor Ronald noticed that Mr. Langley was pacing down the hotel lobby. It was only when the cheerful greeting from a staff member broke through their charged silence. "Good morning, Mr. Langley. I hope you're enjoying your stay," that they both turned their heads in unison, curiosity momentarily distracting them from their confrontation. Dana's heart dropped as she watched Victor Langley stride purposefully across the lobby, a semi-conscious Sophie cradled in his arms. The girl's head lolled against his shoulder, her small body limp and unresponsive, sending a wave of panic through Dana. Mr. Langley's face was a grim mask, his eyes darting around the street outside as if searching for an escape route. He didn't acknowledge the staff's greeting, not even bothering to glance back. Dana felt her heart rate accelerate, realizing that Mr. Langley must have discovered her interference and was now attempting to flee quietly. The sight of Sophie in such a state ignited Dana's determination. She couldn't let him slip away with her. Without a second thought, Dana sprinted from behind the desk, ignoring Ronald's shout of, "Dana, you're fired if you do this." She intercepted Mr. Langley just before he reached the sliding glass doors of the main entrance. "Mr. Langley," Dana called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "please stop." The man turned, his eyes blazing with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled. Dana stood her ground, reaching out to grasp Sophie's limp hand. "Let her go, Mr. Langley. I know what you did to her." For a moment, Mr. Langley's face contorted with rage. Then, in a blink, his expression shifted to one of wounded innocence. "How dare you!" he exclaimed, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "This is my daughter. What are you implying?" Dana didn't back down. "I know she's not your daughter, Victor," she said, using his first name deliberately. "I know you gave her alcohol. I saw the stain on the bed. That's why she's so unresponsive right now." At the mention of alcohol, Mr. Langley's facade cracked. His eyes darted around the lobby, taking in the growing crowd of onlookers. Then, suddenly, his gaze fixed on something behind Dana. and she saw the color drain from his face. Dana turned to see two police officers entering the hotel, their expressions grim and purposeful. In that moment of distraction, Mr. Langley made a desperate move. "Take her," he growled, shoving Sophie roughly into Dana's arms. "I don't care about that mongrel anyway. She is such a hassle." The words dripped with disdain, and Dana felt a surge of anger at his callousness. As Dana stumbled under Sophie's weight, Mr. Langley attempted to flee, but the officers were quicker, their voices ringing out across the lobby. "Freeze! Don't move or we'll be forced to shoot!" Mr. Langley halted in his tracks, his shoulders slumping in defeat as the officers approached, weapons drawn. As they began to handcuff him, Dana's attention turned fully to Sophie, who stirred weakly in her arms. The lobby erupted into a flurry of activity. Hotel guests gathered to watch the unfolding drama, while staff members hovered uncertainly, unsure how to proceed. Through it all, Dana held Sophie close, whispering words of comfort to the semi-conscious girl. In the midst of the chaos, Dana heard the wail of approaching sirens. Help was on the way, she thought with relief. Sophie would be safe now. The paramedics arrived swiftly, their practiced efficiency bringing a sense of order to the chaotic scene. They approached Dana, who still cradled Sophie in her arms. "We'll take it from here, ma'am," one of the paramedics said gently, reaching for Sophie. Dana nodded, carefully transferring the girl to their care. She followed them to a stretcher near the ambulance, watching anxiously as they began their assessment. The paramedics worked quickly, checking Sophie's vital signs and shining a light into her eyes. "Blood pressure is low," one of them muttered, attaching an IV line to Sophie's arm. "We need to start flushing the substances from her system." As Dana stood by, feeling helpless, one of the police officers approached her. "Ma'am, can you tell us what you observed?" Dana nodded, her words tumbling out in a rush. "There were 3 bottles of wine in the room. I saw wine stains on the sheets. I think he must have made her drink it." She paused, then added, "The dining table was a mess too, like there had been some kind of party." The officer nodded grimly. "We found illegal substances in his possession as well. The girl could be under the influence of multiple drugs." As they spoke, Sophie began to stir on the stretcher. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. "My head hurts," she mumbled. "I feel sick." One of the paramedics quickly provided a vomit bag, which Sophie immediately used. Dana stepped forward, using a handkerchief from her uniform pocket to wipe Sophie's mouth. "It's okay, sweetie," Dana soothed. "You're safe now." The police officer knelt down to speak directly to the girl. "Hi there, Sophie. I need to ask you a few questions, but take your time, okay? Can you tell me your full name and what happened?" Sophie looked up at Dana, her eyes clearing slightly even though she was still groggy. "My name is Sophie Lane," she said, her voice weak. "I live on the streets with my mom. She told me I was going to spend some good time with this man. He said he'd take me to a fun place to play and get nice things to eat." Dana and the officer exchanged a look, both understanding the grim reality behind Sophie's innocent words. From across the lobby, they heard Victor Langley's voice rise in a shout. "I paid that addict mother to get her daughter. I did nothing wrong. The girl had a nice time and it's much better than on the streets. She lived her life last night like a princess." The officer's face hardened at these words, and he quickly moved to join his colleagues in securing Mr. Langley. Sophie continued to speak, her words slurred but becoming clearer. "It was fun last night. We ordered a lot of food and I got to dance on the dining table while eating. The man liked and praised my dance." She paused, her face contorting in discomfort. "But I feel very awful right now and dizzy. My belly feels funny and I just want to throw up." Dana felt a wave of nausea at Sophie's words, understanding the full horror of what the girl had been through. "Sophie," she said gently, "what that man did to you wasn't fun. It made you sick. Do you remember drinking or taking anything?" Sophie nodded weakly. Dana continued, her voice soft but firm. "Those are not good things, sweetie. They make you sick and confused." As the paramedics prepared to load Sophie into the ambulance, Dana made a split-second decision. "I'm coming with her," she told the paramedics. "She needs someone with her right now." The paramedics nodded, recognizing the bond that had formed between Dana and Sophie. As they closed the ambulance doors, Dana held Sophie's hand, promising silently that she wouldn't leave the girl's side. The hotel remained a flurry of activity as the situation unfolded. Police officers escorted Mr. Langley into a cruiser, his furious shouts fading the moment the door slammed shut. Nearby, another officer relayed information over the radio, issuing a search alert for Sophie's mother, with the intent to arrest her and revoke her parental rights. Meanwhile, another officer communicated with a social worker over the phone, confirming the hospital where Sophie was being taken. A paramedic secured the ambulance doors, sharing final details with the officer before the vehicle sped away. Inside the ambulance, Dana sat beside Sophie, her heart heavy with the weight of what had transpired. As the vehicle wound its way through the early morning traffic, sirens blaring, Dana found herself reflecting on the events that had led to this moment. She thought about how often these things might go unnoticed, shielded by wealth and the assumption that money equaled respectability. She thought about how close Sophie had come to being another nameless victim, lost in the cracks of a system that too often failed to protect the most vulnerable. As Sophie drifted in and out of consciousness, Dana made a silent promise. She would stand by this girl, ensuring she found safety, far from the streets and the grasp of predators like Victor Langley. Sophie's mother was still out there, with the police searching for her, and Dana believed they would eventually find her. But when the time came for legal battles and difficult decisions, she vowed to be there for Sophie, to be her voice, her advocate, and her unwavering support.